So it's a pleasure to be here today. And by that, I mean not just here physically on this stage, talking with you lovely people. Because just over a year ago, I hit rock bottom. Growing up in a big city, working 60-hour plus weeks, having a busy social life, whilst doing a master's at the same time, was overwhelming. It left me exhausted, depleting, not the person I wanted to be. I definitely was not the best version of myself. What's more, with so many different channels of communication that we have, text message, phone, Instagram, Slack, Skype, you name it, I couldn't escape the noise. And I couldn't escape this feeling that I just needed to get some headspace. And with all this social pressure came something that I had never experienced before. I started developing social anxiety disorder and panic attacks. It sounds ridiculous, but just getting an invite from a friend, inviting me to a birthday party, would send me into states of panic. So what happened is, I stopped socializing. I stopped going out because what I thought I needed was space to reconnect with myself and step away from busy work life, busy social life. But in a city like London that's designed for social interaction, when you stop going out in that environment, you start feeling lonely and you start feeling isolated. So I did something quite drastic. After 20 years of living in a city, I moved to the middle of nowhere in the countryside in France, in my family's abandoned estate. Now, the chateau, yes, it sounds ridiculous. Trust me, I sound ridiculous saying that out loud. The truth is, it's not as glamorous as it seems. My family hasn't lived there for years. And like I described it, it is in a state of disrepair. The only place that's livable on it is a little 2-bedroom house, which is the one that I moved into. So there I was. I'd sold most of my possessions because in the end, I'd left London, but I didn't know how long I was going to be away for until my savings ran out. And what would I do after that? I hadn't actually thought that far. So being city girl, moving to the countryside was fine during the day, most of the time. But in the evenings, when night fell, I locked the doors. I stayed indoors, in bed, with a book. I was too scared to go outside, scared of the dark. And you know what? I had a bag ready, just in case something were to happen. I had my laptop, I had my keys, and I had my running trainers. And I figured the chateau was about 4 kilometers away from the nearest village. And if I really had to, I could run that far. So here I was, in the countryside, in the woods, with no internet and absolutely no phone reception. Can you imagine, after living in a city for so long, finding yourself in that scenario, surrounded in the woods, on your own? No, to be honest, neither could I at the time. And so like I said, I was scared of the dark. But nothing happened it could have done. What did happen, however, is that one night I went to Geneva 2 hours away to go and see my stepmom's play. And when I came back the next day, to my horror, I'd actually been burgled. I didn't have much to take because I'd sold most of my belongings, but they did manage to take my laptop. And when you're living in the countryside, a very valuable tool, a chainsaw, a lot of wilderness to cut down. Now, what this experience taught me was that actually the fear that I had felt, or the fear that I had been scared of, was rational. Actually, for the first time, I realized that what I had done, alienating myself and being in isolation initially, was actually could be quite dangerous. I was actually putting myself in danger. But actually, that didn't frighten me. What frightened me most was the feelings that I felt being there for 4 months on my own. The feelings of loneliness, the feelings of having to spend all that time just with myself when I wasn't used to being in that environment. And I couldn't stop thinking about what everybody else was doing, how much fun they were having, what they were up to, in comparison to what the fun I was not having. I think this is called FOMO, right? Fear of missing out? Yeah, I definitely had that. But to my surprise, I didn't feel anxious and I didn't feel panicked. I just felt sad because I noticed that I'd kept myself so busy with work, with studying, with socializing, that actually I had never taken the time to stop and deal with my feelings. I'd never dealt with past relationships, fear, pain, losing friends, none of that. I just kept myself busy and kept carrying on. As you do in England, right? Keep calm, carry on, that's the saying. And so the scariest thing was actually being there in my own company. But being in nature was the most wonderful experience I could have had. It gave me the space and the time to actually sit with those feelings, think about them. And I'm not going to lie to you, it was painful and I couldn't stop crying. Actually, I cried most of the time. I cried for about 2 months straight, but it was therapeutic. And I really valued the experience today. Over time, I started feeling more comfortable. I gained confidence just because I allowed these feelings to actually surface and to deal with them. And after a while, I stopped wondering what everybody else was doing. Because you know what? I started feeling generally happy in my own company. Dare I say, I even began to love myself? I know. I became proud of myself for having made the move, going out there, and facing my fears, facing my demons, facing myself, taking the time to do a bit of soul searching. And actually, I was proud of myself for being capable of living in the middle of nowhere. For a country girl, no, for a city girl, Freudian slip. Now a country girl, that's a big move. And so whilst my experience is drastic, it's not for everyone. And it's definitely not sustainable in the long run, because whilst living in a city can play havoc on your mental well-being and state of mind, so can living in complete isolation for 4 months. And another experience that I had depicting that was, so I had no internet, had no phone signal, but every so often, like everybody else, I had to go and take out the recycling in the nearest village 4 kilometers away. And as I did that, for some strange reason, these great big bins was the only place that I actually had reception. So I called my mom because, as you can imagine, she was worried to death about me. And I called her, just crying, sobbing. I had nothing to say, really. I was hopeless, and all I had was tears. But there she was, at the end of that phone call, there for me, not judging me, just listening. And it made me realize that connecting with myself was extremely important. It's something that has been extremely valuable to me. But connecting with people is equally important. And as well as having that experience with my mother, I also had a WhatsApp group with 3 of my closest friends. We actually call it Star Beams. And whilst I didn't check my phone because I had no connection and also I didn't want to, once in a while I knew that they had sent me messages and I would read them. And as well as my mother, they didn't judge me. They didn't expect a reply. They just wanted to be there for me. And after 4 months, I missed these connections. I missed having interactions with these friends that cared for me, that had been there for me all along, just not physically. And so I decided to return to London. But I didn't last very long. This time, not because I was suffering from social anxiety attacks or panic attacks, but because I learned my boundaries. I'd learned what balance was for me. And for me, it wasn't about the countryside or living in a city. It wasn't about socializing and working to exhaustion or staying in and being a hermit like I had done. I found the importance and the value in both. Today, I bounce around from the chateau to London, and luckily, I'm able to work remotely some of the time, which means that because of technology, because of the internet, because of what I feared, I'm actually able to do that. Now, the reason why I'm telling you this story is because as I've started expressing my story, telling my journey, more and more, I found people who have had similar experiences and who have felt the same way. And I wasn't alone. I wasn't alone in it at all. Many people in large urban environments suffer from social anxiety, panic attacks, depression. Most of the time, they just do it in silence. Because talking about it is difficult. There's a lot of social stigma around not doing as well as you could be or should be. And people just don't like to talk about these things. But also, making a drastic move, like moving to the countryside, which most of the time, if you don't have a social network there, is very difficult. It's challenging. And as my story has just depicted, it's scary. It's lonely. It's definitely not for everyone. And so, if people are having these struggles living in cities because there's too much noise and it's too chaotic, but at the same time, they're also struggling living in the countryside because it's too remote and lonely, what does this mean for the way that we're living? What does it say about the way that we organize ourselves, our society, and our cities? Doesn't it imply that we should find more creative solutions that incorporate the need for physical space, mental space, but also for a rich social environment? What do you think? Don't you think that we should come up with different solutions for creating our environments, ones that incorporate all of those, such as more villages, rather than larger cities? That's what I wanted to share with you from my personal experience. I hope that some of it resonates with you, not too much, and that you find it within yourself to think about creative solutions to how we can manage these villages, just like we can see here at Mokrin. Thank you.